All right. All right. I hope everybody's getting the hang of air meat and the system today. Yeah, that X one is good, huh? All right. So we're moving right along. I think we're mostly on schedule, which is great. And if anybody has feedback or questions, let us know. Also, we're already getting applications for the rings from a lot of different locations around the world. Thanks, Jahan, for inspiring us and me. So let's keep that momentum well on past just this HandyCon. Let's really grow the community and grow things. So, um, Colin, block domains, HNS Worldwide, big supporter of Handshake since the early days. I remember you in the Namer community discords chat then, and it's great to have you again this year. I think you've been here every. This is your how many HandyCon? Second,
I
third?
think there's a second one for me. I was just in the audience in the first one.
Okay, cool. Well, I've always appreciated your surveys and your research about the data and the numbers, and I know you prepared a little presentation to share as well, Colin.
Sure.
So I'll let you take it away. We'll have some Q&A at the end, or people can use the Q&A tab, or of course chat. But I'll let you go from here.
All right, awesome. Okay, well, thank you, Mike, and thanks everybody for making the time here. I'm going to go ahead and share some slides up here. All right, good. Looks like those just showed up. So like Mike said, I'm going to spend about 20 minutes today, hopefully less, and leave some time for Q&A talking about market data and some trends in the Handshake ecosystem. Always start with the bad news, right? So the first slide that you see up here, I thought just as kind of an overall framework, we're all subject as people who are interested in Handshake, or one of my particular focus is interested in buying and selling Handshake TLDs. We're all subject to the greater forces out there, including what the price of Handshake coin is. You can see the call out box that I put on the slide here. A year ago today, Handshake was trading at 17.5 cents. And at today, last I checked before this, we're about 3.5 cents now. So obviously it's a much different world than, when we all gathered a year ago, even though some of the writing may have been on the wall. But it's a very different landscape. And before we get into really Handshake specific stuff, I wanted to take just a couple moments and talk about really some bigger picture, elaborate a little bit on what I mentioned, those forces that that Handshake is subject to. I thought Jahan made a nice point, or put it nicely, in the opening session. He mentioned that Handshake, and this maybe makes it atypical among crypto projects, Handshake's always had a reason for existing. It's not a transparent self-enrichment scam for its founders, the way that I tend to think maybe even the majority of crypto projects are. And at various points there has been a lot of notability and notoriety around Handshake, but just objectively, it's a much smaller project in terms of market cap, in terms of awareness, compared to a lot of other crypto projects. And all crypto projects, to a certain extent, we saw this both on the upswing and the downswing the last few years, are subject to forces even beyond the crypto world, the global capital markets, governmental action, and for smaller coins like Handshake, the bellwether crypto assets have a lot of influence in terms of price activity and market sentiment. So I just really briefly here wanted to put up, and I apologize for the US-centric nature of this slide. I know I just mentioned global capital markets, and as we saw a couple minutes ago, we do have people coming from all over the world here, which is great. It sounded like a Huey Lewis and the News song when Mike was reading off all those cities. But I did want to just talk here, these are some bellwether indices. You've got the S&P 500, the Dow Jones, and the NASDAQ. And these are just, the past 12 months for each of these. And you're seeing, either what in traditional finance passes for pretty significant down performance, or in the case of the Dow, relatively flat. Compare this to the 2 to 4 years prior to this, when asset valuations across the board were really high, and when are the good times going to end? Didn't seem like ever. That's really come to an end. So the pain, even though Handshake coin being down 80%, is certainly a far cry from the Nasdaq being down about 10. But to a certain extent, we're all subject to some of these same forces. Just elaborating on that a little bit, how much cash is in the system? What do investors? What type of attitude, I should say, do investors have toward your proverbial risk on assets? Those are all things that are going to make and have really made a big difference in crypto and in Handshake. The top of the slide here, I'm sorry that it's a little bit faint, but I just wanted to include the 10-year treasury. People may have different opinions about what the right interest rate benchmark to put in here, but the 10-year is, I think, as good as any. Really, we're looking at, if I can find my notes here, we were at about 1.6% 2 years ago in terms of the 10-year treasury rate. We're now, pardon my lack of good eyesight, but we're now in the 4% range. That's a huge difference, and a huge departure from what for most of I'm 36. For most of my adult life, it has been ultra low interest rates, and even frankly beforehand. So this is just a little bit of the kind of the global reality that everybody's dealing with. Really quickly, at the bottom of the slide, these two charts here are the Federal Reserve balance sheet, and this is, again, one data point. The chart on the left is for as long as data was available, and then I've called out detailed the last year essentially in the bottom right hand corner. People, whether you follow financial world or not, people just from reading the news have probably heard about expansion of the Fed's balance sheet, quantitative easing, expansive monetary policy, and basically the Federal Reserve. And I'm probably the worst person to be explaining this, but as the Federal Reserve became, over the last decade plus, the buyer of last resort for a lot of types of securities and other financial products. That couldn't go on forever, and what we're seeing in the last year is not exactly a return to normalcy, but a tightening of that previously, very expansionary type of approach. So, what does that mean? Just bottom line, less money in the system, and a more scrutinous look at risk, including for assets like crypto, and including for smaller crypto assets like Handshake. Just continuing on, and this is the final non-Handshake slide, I promise, but just wanted to include, for perspective here, a handful of, kind of a grab bag, if you will, of other crypto assets. On the top, you've got Bitcoin and Ethereum, really, I think what anybody would consider to be the bellwether assets in crypto. And then at the bottom, a lot of the Handshake ecosystem is, involved in Atom or interested in it. And so that's the bottom left, and then Akash on the bottom right. I know Greg Osuri, their founder, I believe, is going to be on one of the panels later today or tomorrow. But it's really a pretty, these again are all, last 1 year charts. And it's a pretty common theme across the board, at least directionally. I shouldn't say nobody, but very few parties seem to be immune from, the crypto winter or the general malaise that we're experiencing. So on this next slide here, I promised I'd actually start talking about Handshake. I've lined up here on the top the primary market, and on the bottom the secondary market. In inception to date, or as long as data was available, for Handshake market activity. And in each of these charts, the purple line, which you can refer to the left-hand axis, that's primary and secondary market respectively in Handshake terms. And then the green line in each of the chart, I've overlaid US dollar terms. And I should have brought this up in my first chart. I know I probably lose a little bit of street cred in the Handshake ecosystem, talking about the dollar price of Handshake. Just being realistic, I'm biased. My landlord still doesn't accept Handshake and does accept dollars. But just from a more broad objective standpoint, I think that, that's the world that we're living in right now, whether we like it or not. And I don't think that as Handshake prices move the coin, that TLD prices move, totally one-to-one in terms of, dollar price of Handshake goes down, prices go up totally proportionally. I think that we're seeing that, for buyers and sellers, we are somewhat tethered to the, what does this actually mean in dollar terms, or in somebody's, base fiat currency, if applicable, if it's not the dollar. That being said, though, what I want to point out related to the primary auction or the primary market auction bid volume, and just for record here, this is total bids. So, the aggregate figures of 414 million Handshake and almost $70 million that you can think of as the open interest, as opposed to the ultimate purchase aggregate purchase price paid for all these registrations. I haven't done the math on all of that yet, but it's interesting to note that in the spring of 2021, when the first year of Handshake was completed, the first 52 weeks of weekly TLD releases was completed. I personally was expecting at that time for there to be, in Handshake terms and dollar terms, whatever, for there to be a drop off in auction volume, with the assumption being that, wow, a lot of the good names have been taken. It's, I don't want to say bottom of the barrel, but a lot of the good names have been taken, and maybe some things that people haven't thought of will come up. But I was wrong about that. I'm happy to eat crow on that. We've seen the primary market activity stay very resilient and even increase since that period in time. Some of that is names not being renewed and being competed on again, and there's some great programs out there that people have created to help people identify that. But I think that just speaks to general resiliency, even with the even with the reality that in dollar terms, that has translated into lower and lower, actual dollar values, particularly in the last quarter of last year when, crypto winter was at its coldest. Everything was hitting the news about FTX and other scandals, and Handshake price was down in the 2.5 cents range. I'll keep moving along here and just wrap up. Secondary market, it's a similar story with a lot of resiliency and even an increase in Handshake terms. It has gotten down to lower levels in US dollar terms. I'd like to point out, though, that I think it was starting in December. That was the first month in over a year and a half, if I'm getting this right, that dollar volume of secondary transactions was below 100 grand. So, take it where you can get it. I'll go ahead and just wrap up my final visual slide here. I just want to include for comparison, I don't want to call ENS and UD competitors. I think they're often cases, especially in the case of Ethereum, aligned with Handshake's mission. I did want to kind of rack and stack a little bit, though, in terms of ultimate sales volume. And I know there are more projects out there as well, but I consider ENS, Unstoppable Domains, and Handshake as the big three. Just in terms of secondary market sales, which isn't the only thing you can look at for sure, but ENS is head and shoulders above here. And you can see that I didn't go through and work out real-time dollar values for everything, but I did include some, if you want to just multiply some average ETH assumptions to in the case of ENS, over 75,000 ETH worth of secondary market transactions. So at the low end of that, whatever you want to assume for average ETH price, that's $113 million. It's a little bit of a different story with with unstoppable domains. Really, and this was something interesting to look at just because of sometimes some of the statistics I've heard coming out of that camp. But really, on the secondary market sales side, UD, I should say, has been a little bit behind Handshake and even more distantly behind ENS, meaning that, I don't, again, this chart is just here for representative purposes because it was easier than me doing the math. But for unstoppable domains to have secondary sales that are higher than Handshakes, you'd have to assume that their sales were an average of $4,500 per ETH, which I don't think is the case. So anyway, just a little bit of context for purposes here. I'm getting Mike. I know I'm running a little bit long here, so if we still have time, I'd love to take any questions that people may have or cover anything that you think we should. But that's it for my major slides here.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you so much. I love the data. I know you spent a lot of time making these reports. Is this report going to be on your blog or somewhere people could get it if they want to see it?
I'll make this public either on Twitter or on the blog. I'll do that tonight or tomorrow at the latest, so that people can dig into this and take their time. I know I went through pretty quickly.
Okay, we have a question here from Ricardo from .universe. I'll read it out loud, but you can see it. Do you think a burn for Handshake would be a good idea?
Yeah, I don't know if I know exactly what the mechanics of this question would be. As you know, Mike, obviously there's some burn mechanics already built into the protocol in terms of the primary market auctions and the winning bid amount being burned and removed from the protocol, total ultimate supply. I don't know that it'd be worth the political uphill battle of trying to. I think you would have to do some sort of a fork for something like that. What I do think is worth people, for better or for worse, most of the FOSS developers, a lot of, and we'll talk about this in other sessions, I think, a lot of reserved name recipients haven't, and at this point probably aren't going to or won't be able to claim their names. So I think that as a community, it would behoove us to spread the word, I should say, that it's not a 2.04 or whatever it is maximum supply on an effective basis. You should back out. You can assume that you're going to back out a certain proportion of unclaimed assets, and that's going to bring the overall supply, for all practical purposes, down.
Okay. The expired names, I can't recall. I think .x has one link, and there's some other links. But do you want to share?
Yes, I was having a mental lapse when I was bringing up that point. I know that so they can be bid on anywhere, to my knowledge, anywhere that you bid on normal unregistered TLDs. And maybe someone in the comments can help out here, but there was at least one individual in the ecosystem who put together, I think it was a Bob Wallet or a ShakeDex add-on that allowed people to see what the upcoming expirations were. It's kind of like a drop.
If somebody could link it in the chat, that would help. I can't recall. I remember X and then /piring. Yeah, Fernando Falchi just shared.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, and Kirk. So that's the link. But yeah, basically the expired names automatically will show up in Namebase and in any other auction platform like Bob Wallet or wherever there's explorers showing upcoming name auctions. They automatically move up. But okay, I think we're running low on time. Time's up. yeah, so our time is up here.
Okay.
Any last words, Colin, or how can people find you? You can link in the
Sure.
chat or just phone.
The best way to reach me is I'm at HNS Worldwide on Twitter, and I am okay at responding to direct messages. That's probably the best way to reach me. And I'm also around on some of the Discords as well. Mike, thanks so much for everything you and the team have done. Off to a great start. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been smoother than I thought. I was, a little bit of
Well, don't
hiccups. I
say
don't know if
that,
people
brother.
can notice. Yeah, I know. I'm jinxing myself. All right, knock. Okay. Yeah, so there's some chats. I hope people are getting some. We can't answer every single question. I see Paige asking about expiry strings. Of course, it's a protocol. People can make their own apps and scripts to find expiring names. But Fulci's just saying they're just become a normal name, like just a blank one, right? Just available to open. You have to open the name on the auction, right? So if a name expires, it doesn't automatically go to auction. It's just not yet opened. So you actually have to open the auction again. It doesn't automatically go to auction. Somebody has to send a request to the protocol to open the name and then bid on the name. You have to start the auction. Okay. Thanks, Paige. Thanks for being here. Thank you, everybody. We're going to close this session. Hopefully, everybody can figure out the air meet. You'll hit view schedule for those joining, and then join the next session. So I'm losing track of the schedule myself. There's so many great ones. I think it's going to be a little bit relating to Burn. HNS protocol panel is next. But Colin, you're going to be moderating, so I'm excited for this one.
That's right. You're stuck with me. So I'll talk to you in a minute.
Stuck with you. So I'll see you in the next session, everyone.